Welcome to Listworthy's explanation of the movie Gothica, which is about a psychiatrist accused of murdering her husband. The only problem is she doesn't remember doing it, and she is confined in the women's mental hospital she used to work in alongside her former patients. The movie begins with Dr. Miranda Gray talking to her patient Chloe Sava, a woman who murdered her stepfather and claims that the devil visits her at night and rapes her while she is in her room. But Miranda doesn't believe her and attributes her stories to mental illness. After her session with Chloe is over, Miranda visits her husband Douglas, who also works at the penitentiary psych ward, and expresses her frustration with Chloe, who isn't getting better and keeps embellishing her rape stories. Douglas encourages Miranda to hang in there, and then the two share a romantic moment, which is interrupted by Miranda's colleague, Dr. Pete Graham. Doug leaves to go meet a contractor at his farmhouse in Willow Creek, Rhode Island, while Miranda stays up late working in her office. She goes for a swim at the hospital pool and then drives home as a storm rages. As she nears a bridge, she sees a girl standing in the middle of the road. Miranda swerves off the road to avoid hitting the girl and has an accident. When Miranda gets out of the car, she goes to check to see if the girl is okay. But when she approaches, the distressed-looking girl suddenly bursts into flames and grabs a hold of Miranda, who also catches fire. The scene then cuts to Miranda abruptly waking up in one of the rooms of the penitentiary psych ward without any idea of how the heck she got there. Her friend, Dr. Pete Graham, shows up and tries to help her remember the events that led to her being in the psych ward. When she doesn't remember, he informs her that her husband Doug is dead and that she is the one that killed him. Miranda freaks out at that news, so much so that she has to be restrained and sedated. Sometime later, perhaps even days later, she is allowed to roam free amongst the other mental patients, some of whom used to be her patients, including Chloe. Chloe approaches Miranda, and Miranda says she doesn't belong there. But Chloe refutes her claims and says that she is now one of them. She says that even if she tells the truth, no one will listen to her because she is crazy. And the more she tries to prove people wrong, the crazier she will look. She further taunts that Miranda is now invisible. Before she leaves, Chloe leaves Miranda with a newspaper cutout about her husband's death. At night, Miranda is woken up by flickering lights. The glass door to her room mists over, and an invisible hand writes the words, "Not alone," on the other side of the door. Miranda feels a presence in her room and is scared, but she convinces herself that she is simply hallucinating. The next morning, in the showers, she starts to see visions of the girl from the bridge, who attacks her and carves the words "Not alone" into her arm. No one else can see the girl, and Miranda's behavior causes a panic in the showers. Miranda is treated for the wound on her arm, and her doctors start to believe she is suicidal and is inflicting the wounds on herself. Miranda is visited by her friend Ted, who will be her defense attorney. He tells her that all the physical evidence at the crime scene and the murder weapon points to her as the killer. Ted says he may be able to win her freedom if she pleads temporary insanity, but that it's a long shot. Miranda vehemently denies killing her husband or being crazy, though she continues to be accused of murder, even by her husband's best friend, Sheriff Bob Ryan, who verbally assaults Miranda and demands to know why she killed Doug. Sheriff Bob Ryan forcefully makes Miranda look at the pictures of the murder scene, and in one of the pictures, the words "Not alone" are written in blood on a door. Miranda has another freakout and she is sedated. As she sleeps, she slowly starts to remember what happened when Doug was killed. During another therapy session, Miranda tells the hospital director Phil Parsons that someone else was in the house when Doug was killed, but she doesn't remember who. As they talk, Miranda notices a picture of a girl in Phil Parsons' office, whom she recognizes as the girl she encountered on the bridge on the night of Doug's death. Phil doesn't believe Miranda. He informs her that the girl is his daughter Rachel, who committed suicide 4 years earlier by jumping off the bridge where Miranda first saw her. At night, an invisible force walks through the halls of the hospital, and only its footprints are visible on the floor. The invisible force stops at Miranda's door, and Miranda, sensing its presence, wakes up from her sleep. Miranda says that she is a rational person and doesn't believe in ghosts or the paranormal, but that if the invisible force really is the ghost of Rachel Parsons, she should help her get free from her cell. In reply to Miranda, the ghost unlocks her door and Miranda goes free. She even catches a proper glimpse of Rachel's ghost. Miranda sneaks into what used to be Doug's office, and the computer there turns itself on and displays the news article about Rachel's suicide. In the corner of the computer screen, a camera feed from the hospital's solitary section suddenly appears, and it shows Rachel standing in the middle of the hallway, staring up at Miranda through the camera and doing her creepy ghost thing. Miranda recognizes the solitary section as the section of the hospital where Chloe is being kept. She urgently rushes over to see what's going on and check on Chloe. When she passes Chloe's room, she sees Chloe being raped and momentarily sees a man's chest pressed up against the window. The man's chest bears a tattoo of the solar anima. Miranda runs screaming through the hallways to get help for Chloe, and she is captured by the security guys. Miranda realizes that Chloe was not making up stories of her rape and inquires from Pete if she was helped. But Pete tells her that there were no signs of rape on Chloe's body and that the bruises on her face were self-inflicted. Judging from all the signs so far, it is quite possible that Chloe's rapist is a malevolent ghost. When Miranda sees Chloe the next day, she apologizes for not believing her earlier, and the two embrace. Chloe warns Miranda that her attacker said he was going to target Miranda next. After all her stunts, Miranda is taken to a smaller, more secure room. Rachel's ghost shows up at night and starts to violently assault her. Through the security camera, Rachel is invisible though, and it looks like Miranda is trying to commit suicide. When a nurse and security guy come to check up on her, she appears to have knocked herself out, but it turns out she was only faking unconsciousness when she takes the security guy and nurse by surprise, grabs the keys, and makes a run for it. I guess Rachel the ghost was in on the plan too and staged that invisible assault. During her escape, Miranda is spotted by one of the security guards at the hospital, but they are old friends, so he doesn't sell her out, but instead helps her by misdirecting the other security guards. He even gives her his car keys and tells her to go. While Miranda is driving, Rachel the ghost messes with the car and nearly causes Miranda to have an accident. When Miranda demands to know what the hell Rachel wants from her, Rachel lets her know through a song on the radio that she wants her to go home. When Miranda goes to her house, she finally remembers killing Doug and sees visions of the gruesome murder, realizing that she killed Doug because Rachel's ghost possessed her, which explains why all the physical evidence pointed to her as the murderer. Still eagerly sleuthing for answers, Miranda remembers Doug going to his farmhouse in Willow Creek, Rhode Island earlier that day and believes there might be a connection. However, when she arrives at Willow Creek, the house there is vacant. In the cellar of a barn, she discovers a room containing a blood-stained bed, restraints, a box containing drugs, and video equipment. She plays the tape that is still in the camera and watches as a screaming woman is tortured and murdered by Doug. In the final seconds of the video, Doug covers the woman's lifeless body with a sheet, walks up to the camera and proudly says that it is good to be God. At this point, the police arrive and an officer draws a gun on Miranda, who is holding a knife. Miranda backs up to a staircase and an injured girl suddenly grabs hold of her from the adjoining crawl space. The police rescue the girl while Miranda is taken to the police. Dr. Phil Parsons visits Miranda at the station and she tells him that Rachel was one of Doug's victims and that her death was a murder, not suicide. Before leaving, Dr. Parsons says that after Rachel died, he used to dream of her burning in flames with her hands held up, kind of like the tattoo of the solar anima on the hospital rapist's chests. Miranda starts to believe that not alone means that Rachel was not Doug's only victim. After speaking to Dr. Phil Parsons, Miranda calls Pete from jail, and she tells him that she believes that Chloe's rapist at the hospital with the solar anima tattoo has something to do with Doug and Rachel's murder. Sheriff Bob Bryan talks to Miranda about how she came to know about Doug's crimes, and Miranda realizes that the real meaning of not alone is that there was a second killer involved in the murders. Using her experience as a psychiatrist, Miranda builds a psychological profile of the second killer and realizes that Sheriff Ryan fits the profile perfectly. He reveals himself to be the other killer and attacks her, revealing his solar anima tattoo during the fight. Not only was he Doug's partner in crime, he is also Chloe's rapist. As Sheriff Ryan is about to inject a syringe into Miranda, Rachel's ghost comes in with a much-needed assist and makes the lights flicker, enabling Miranda to turn the syringe on Ryan, dragging him. As he goes searching for Miranda, Ryan, under the influence of the drugs, begins ranting about the numerous murders he and Doug committed. He then reveals that they started secretly raping and torturing women at Willow Creek, with Rachel being their first victim. After firing his shotgun, Ryan causes a gas leak in the police station. He sees Rachel's ghost and fires a shot towards her, which causes an explosion and sets him ablaze. Miranda then finishes him off by shooting him dead. Pete, who also figured out the mystery, arrives at the station worried about Miranda's safety. He is relieved to find Miranda unharmed, and he mouths the words "I'm sorry" to her through the soundproof glass. Approximately a year later, Miranda is seen walking Chloe on a city sidewalk, discussing how each helped the other come to terms with her experiences. Miranda claims to be free of all ghostly influence and sends Chloe off in a taxi. Miranda then sees a young boy standing in the middle of the road, who appears as though he is about to be struck by a fire truck. But after the fire truck passes through the boy without harming him, she realizes he was only a ghost. As Miranda walks away, a poster of a missing child is shown, and the ghost boy Miranda saw is in the picture. And that, in a nutshell, is what happens in Gothica. Critics hated this movie, but I liked it, which is why I am giving it a watchability rating of 6.5 out of 10. I would have rated it higher, but it had some large gaping plot holes, such as how are Miranda and Chloe free women at the end of the movie? Possession or not, Miranda murdered her husband. Even if he was a murderer and rapist, in real life, she would still get prosecuted for murder because no jury or judge would accept that a ghost made her do it. It's also never explained how Sheriff Bob Ryan managed to sneak into Chloe's room at the asylum and regularly rape her without getting caught, or how he never left any physical evidence of his sexual assault. Chloe too murdered her stepfather, so I don't know how she got free at the end of the movie. Anyway, this movie was enjoyable, and it is one I see myself watching again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or comment, hit the subscribe button below, and check out some of my other content.